Welcome to the Geek to Geek podcast, where you're a wizard, Beej.
Oh,
I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host, Beej.
I'm a wizard, apparently. Yay!
You are. Today we're going to talk about Harry Potter, kind of like the extended Harry Potter universe in general. We know Fantastic Beasts is coming out, and I think generally we're a little bit excited about it, but not super excited. We probably won't do a full episode on it, is what I'm trying to get at here. But we do like Harry Potter, and we have thoughts about Harry Potter, so we wanted to talk about it since it was kind of relevant to the movie coming out.
And I'm not that excited about the movie, but I absolutely love Harry Potter. That it's been something since the very first movie came out that I've just held very dear. So I am moderately hopeful for the movie, so we'll see how that goes. But I love Harry Potter, like just love it.
Yeah, and so I loved the books as a kid. Like the first time I read through them, I was a kid and then a teenager. They came out as I was a teen, towards the end of them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And because you're a little bit older than me, but not that much older. But so I just re-listened to them for the first time as an adult. I didn't reread them, but I had them all as audiobooks, and I hadn't ever actually like sat down and listened to them as audiobooks.
Yeah, I hadn't either. I've heard wonderful things about the audiobooks.
Yeah, they're good. So I just got done listening to the audiobook version of them, and I listened to all of them basically. And then I went back after that and I started trying to watch the movies, but the movies are a little bit rough, like especially the early movies in it.
Yeah,
those first ones are just like, they're not easy to watch these days.
They're not. We went back and watched the very first one not long ago, and it was very painfully obvious it was a product of its time, that it was very much. And, you know, I watched it when I was 18, and it made me go back and read the 1 through 4 that were out at that point, and I loved it then, and it was fairly hard to watch now.
Yeah, so like going back and trying to watch the movies, it feels like the movies are like chunks of the book brought to life, but a lot of the movies aren't actually adapted to movies. Like, you know what I mean? They didn't do the next step or two where you have to take your source material and actually adapt it to make it live on its own in a movie. So if you've read the books and you've seen the movies, it feels cool to see these things that you know about. But if you are coming to the movies cold and you've never read the books, it would be so confusing in a bunch of different ways. There are things that are never explained or never like circled back to, or things that are just left dangling. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, there really are. And it's almost like they have the skeleton of the story that goes through where they're hitting all of the high points. And it tells a story, but it doesn't necessarily tell the same story, because there are so many things that, you know, you have to leave things out for an adaptation. There's no way that you can't. There's no way you can include everything when you're adapting for the screen, but it was as though they left out so many character moments just to make sure that they included every plot point they needed to, that I actually liked the first half of Deathly Hallows a lot, where everyone else in the world hated it. Jennifer and I absolutely love it because it's time we get to spend with the characters we love, as opposed to just, you know, paint by numbers getting that story done.
They're all so long too that it's amazing they don't have more character moments, because almost everyone, maybe everyone, is over 2 hours. A lot of them are like 2.5 hours. Like, they are just epic in length for the movies. And it's crazy that we don't get more into like the minutia and like the character development. It's more like plot point after plot point after plot point. And I do think that the last 3 movies are a lot better, because like I said, I tried to watch the first couple and I just gave them up as a lost cause. I liked them at the time they came out, but I can't rewatch them. And then I moved on, and the one that I finally watched all the way through was 4. So I watched 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I actually like 4. I know some people have mixed feelings about it, but I like Goblet of Fire, and I like that book too. Do you like that one?
I liked it okay the first time I saw the movie. You know, the first few times I saw the movie, that I thought it was very good. It's kind of painful to go back, because that entire book now, even on rereading them the last time I did, it felt just plotting to me, way more than almost any of the others. It was as though she needed to extend it for some unknown reason, and it's a transition book between the kids' book of 1 to 3 3, and the more mature subject matter in 5, 6, and 7. But as a transition book and even as a transition movie, it felt as though it wasn't quite balanced in terms of how it was bridging those two tones. So for me, reading it, I skipped a lot of it, rereading it, honestly. And then the movie, it just didn't feel as though I was invested in it. There was nothing really going on. There was never really, to me, any kind of danger or interesting motivation for the characters, with it just being the contest. That was not engaging to me as an audience member, but I love 5, 6, and 7, both as movies and as books. And number 3, with The Prisoner of Azkaban, I really, really, really like going back and watching it now because I love Alfonso Cuarón. He is a fantastic director, and I think that despite all of the, lack of exposition and kind of disjointed nature of that movie, I think it is one of the most technically great movies in the series because of how he directed it by putting things together, even though he left out a lot.
That's interesting. Maybe I should give 3 another shot because I had tried 1 and 2 and I was so frustrated and I knew I liked 4, so I just skipped over 3 entirely. But I've heard some other people say that 3 is really good on its own.
It is because it's so different from the others, because you have Chris Columbus who did 1 and 2, and they are pretty much the straight adaptations as much as you can of books 1 and 2. They feel like books 1 and 2. And the third movie and book 3 both in the same way, they feel the same, that you have this same tone and atmosphere that he was able to capture, but it is a completely different style of movie because as a director, he hates exposition. That's one thing he absolutely despises as a creator, is having any kind of explanatory dialogue that where they're like, and the Patronus is the blobbity blobbity blah, so everyone should know this. And remember last time when Moaning Myrtle was doing this in the Chamber of Secrets, yada, 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 he doesn't do anything like that. So it felt as though it was kind of disjointed when you're coming from the Chris Columbus movies that were those kind of paint by numbers, adaptations to get it exactly onto the screen. And he did a full adaptation to it, but it felt disjointed for people because he didn't necessarily tie everything together with that narrative like the first 2 did.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and re-watch that one because that sounds interesting. But I think you hit on something a little bit earlier when you were saying like 1 and 3 feel like kids' books and movies.
Yes.
And then 5 through 7 feel like kind of young adult books and movies, and then 4 is that transition from one to another. So if you like what that one ended up being, which I do, I like that book a lot, like the competition and stuff. I find it interesting, but I know other people don't because it kind of has a tone that's separate from all of the other ones in the whole series. Going back, and the one that I actually struggled with to get through, and I was just listening, like I wasn't even actively reading, I was doing other things while I was listening to these. The one I struggled with was book 5, The Order of the Phoenix, because
really,
yeah, the first time I read it, I liked it a lot, but going back to it the second time, all it is there's only like one mystery in it, whereas almost all the other books have different mysteries and different magical items layered on top of each other and interlinked in interesting ways.
I could see that.
So they're putting together a bunch of different things that tie in towards the end of the book or the greater narrative, right? 5 doesn't really have that. 5 has one mystery and it's the same thing and it repeats over and over for the entire book. And it's just about being in the Department of Mysteries and Harry seeing through Voldemort's eyes. And that's like the only thing. And it's a mystery the first time you read through it, but then the second time you come back to it, you know exactly what's happening. So there's no... It's not interesting to hear the same thing over and over. The other thing is that's the one where the entire time Harry is just an angsty teenager. And it just bugs me.
I know.
Because I don't really know why that tone feels so different. Because like 6 and 7 books, and then, 6, 7, 8 for movies, they are all darker too in tone. But I'm fine with them because they're not like teenage angsty, whiny dark.
Yep.
They're just dark because there's an evil lord taking over the world, right? Whereas 5 is just kind of this like teenager complaininess, which is really, really annoying.
Absolutely. he's just being a little whiny baby through a lot of it. And it's book 5, when he goes on a date with Cho, is probably my least favorite scene in the entire series, because I've never yelled at a book character before. That when he goes on that date, the way that he treats her, I was in college at this point, and I just yelled at him for what he was doing to her. And I really like book 6. That book 6 and movie of 6 are completely different in tone. And a lot of people complained about this, that they were so different that they left out so much out of the movie from book 6. But as Jennifer and I have talked about it, we realized why. That book 6 is very dark. It's leading up to the final book. It has to be this kind of penultimate, just dark, kind of stepping stone into the final battle. And with 2 more movies coming out, they knew that they were splitting book 7 at this point. They had to have a lighthearted movie. They had zero chance in Deathly Hallows to really be lighthearted. So they took all of the fun parts out of book 6 and really made it kind of this romantic comedy as you watch the movie, where you have, Harry getting day drunk essentially. And when he's on, I can't remember the name of the potion, but he's got pincers. Yeah, the Felix Felicis, where he acts like, not like he does in the book, but it works for the screen. And just everything where they're talking about Dragon Balls and all of this stuff that they're eating at the party. And it's funny where there's not a lot of room for that. So they had a very serious book. They had a very serious end of movie 4. They had a very serious book, movie 5 with Order of the Phoenix. And then you have Deathly Hallows, which is mega dark. And so if you're looking for a family series, you have to have some sort of levity. So that's where movie 6 came in. It doesn't necessarily line up with the tone of book 6, but it stands on its own and makes the movie series flow a little bit better by having that kind of levity in it.
Yeah, I actually think that Half-Blood Prince is my favorite book and my favorite movie, too, out of all of them, having just revisited it, right? I wouldn't have said that the first time through, but now going back through as an adult, I really lean that way. And the other thing that I noticed more now, because I've never really marathoned any of the Harry Potter movies before this.
Okay. Yeah.
6, so I'm talking movies now. The story of the books, they all flow pretty well into each other. The movies feel a little bit more disjointed, but
yeah.
Half-Blood Prince and then Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Deathly Hallows Part 2, they make one cohesive story, especially in the movies.
Yes, they do.
So it's almost like rewatching Lord of the Rings, where when you watch that first one, you're committed and you need to watch all the way through to get the whole story. I was just amazed by how well Half-Blood Prince flows into both Deathly Hallows movies, and they kind of expect you to know everything. And I didn't know that at the time because I watched them as they came out, so it was like a year between every one. But watching them 3 nights in a row, it became evident that those last 3 movies are one complete story, and it feels so much better to watch them together.
I could see that. I've never watched them together. I've never done that kind of marathon of the final 3, mainly because they're so long. You had mentioned earlier that they're very long, and that's kept me from doing it.
Yeah, I get that. They are all really long, which is why once I started to not like those first couple movies that I watched, I was like, nah, I'm not going to sit here for 2.5 hours watching this one. I'm going to move on. But
I want to know what you think about 3, though. Go back and watch it, because I've liked going back and watching it, and I really want to know your take on that.
And I really liked re-listening to them all. I'm sure I would like rereading them all also. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I just did the Audible this time. Like I said, 5 was a little bit of a struggle because it's like the longest book and it's also the most angsty book. But besides that, I mean, even that I got through and it was fine and I enjoyed it. I like it as a book series a lot. And then as a movie series, it's just kind of interesting to see it come to life, but it's not necessarily like a great movie series. So I don't want to sound like I'm negative on Harry Potter because I'm not. I love the universe and I like the book series as 1 through 7 books, just reading through or listening through, anything like that.
And I'm the same way. I loved rereading the books. And it's been years since I actually reread them all. That I did my last reread of the entire series just before Deathly Hallows Part 2 came out. That I finished Deathly Hallows on the day that Deathly Hallows 2 released.
Oh, that's interesting. That's cool.
So I made sure to have the entire series under my belt going in at the very, very end.
So I wanted to know, what do you think of like the extended universe, for lack of a better term? I don't know if it has an actual term, like Star Wars had like the expanded universe, but Harry Potter extended universe. So right around the time the books came out, or maybe in the middle of the books, there were a couple that were like Fantastic Beasts and Quidditch that were more like, they were little mini like novellas that were just almost reference books for topics within like the universe. I didn't like those at all. I thought they were very boring, and I never, like, I read them once and I was like, oh, I felt like I kind of wasted my time. But did you like those at all?
I've got them. I've paged through them and never read them. That it was just something I picked up on sale, that they were there, they're interesting, and I liked having the idea of some Hogwarts. I liked having Hogwarts textbooks, I guess, because I'm such a nerd, but that's the extent of what I like about those, really. They're kind of non-entities for me.
See, I think I would have liked them if they were actually like Hogwarts textbooks. Like, if it was a full textbook that was textbook size that you're used to when you go to like high school or college.
Yeah,
and it
I can see that, yeah.
It actually had super in-depth information about the entire world. Like, give me a textbook that's the history of magic that the kids are reading in their classes to learn about it. I would probably like that. But
that's true. I would love that.
Like, those books aren't that. They are taking that idea and then making it like not even young adult, but almost like kid book.
Kids,
you know,
almost like chapter books.
Yeah, like chapter books. Like my daughter is 6, and so we're reading chapter books that are more in depth than those side things from Harry Potter back then. Okay, so there's also like 3 short story collections that were released. That was only like 2 or 3 months ago. I just read them right when they came out. Did you check those out at all?
No, I purposefully avoided them and all of the short stories that have come out on Pottermore.
Okay, I've read the short stories on Pottermore also. So we differ here. I really like them, and I'm taking it by your tone that you don't.
I don't like the idea of an expanded universe for Harry Potter. It's not as though, and I haven't read Cursed Child, but the only reason I haven't read Cursed Child is just not taking the time. I fully intend to read it. But for the extended universe, all of these short stories, the American setting for Fantastic Beasts, I'm just put off by it. That part of the charm for me with Harry Potter has been that this is what it is. That here is this series, here are these books, here are these characters, and this is the story that was being told. And having it finalized, and, you know, even with Cursed Child, that there is an end to this, that this is where these characters that we like, this is where the story took them, and it's where Cursed Child is almost like an epilogue that works from what I've heard. I'm okay with that. But the expanded universe, the filling out the diegetical background for all of the different schools, where you're filling out this American prequel, really, and where these ideas come from, it loses some of its charm. It's almost like it's trying to be Star Wars, it's trying to be the MCU, and while I trust Jo Rowling, I really do, she is a fantastically creative person and a wonderful human being, it's just, it loses its charm. What people have said about Star Wars, of being inundated with Star Wars stuff, is, you know, makes them not care so much about because there's so much of it out there that, you know, we're going to get tired of Star Wars. But that's what Star Wars has always been. There's always been merchandise. There's always been all of this around, and it's been a property more than it has been a narrative in a lot of ways. That Harry Potter is a meaningful narrative that hits on a lot of cultural issues, a lot of personal issues, and by bringing this expanded universe in, it feels as though it's diluting that to me. That I don't care because I've got the meaningful narrative. That all of this other stuff is just like, I don't like her answering all of these questions outside and explaining all of this stuff, or, oh, I should have done this, that this is what really happened. And it's just like, in that way, I'm kind of a new critic when it comes to that, with literary criticism of what is in the text is in the text, and whatever you felt as though should be there is whatever should be there. Whatever is there has been influenced by what you have told us now, but you should let us see it in the text rather than explaining it and constantly bringing this new narrative forward. I don't like it.
Okay. You those were a lot of statements. I disagree with a lot of what you just said.
I'm sure a lot of people do.
I can see if you don't like her little like additions to the main story, right? Her in interviews trying to clarify, or no, this was this that way, or this was that way. You just didn't see it. That I get that. That's kind of like she's retroactively like she's retrofitting her own story to make it better.
A lot of this stuff.
That bugs me a little. But everything else he said, I think that the short stories, they are like little vignettes into the world. These are the ones that came out a few months ago, and I'm blanking on the titles of them because obviously they weren't memorable enough. But they were like little vignettes on characters that we already know, like almost a minor like biography of some of the main characters that aren't not the main characters, but like side characters. So like
Rita Skeeter and things like that.
Yeah, or like Lupin or like Umbridge, things like that flesh out them as characters. And then it's also all these little vignettes of more about certain schools of magic and how they function. Yeah. So there's a short story that's all about animagus, whatever the plural of it is, animagi, I think, and how you actually become an animagus and magic. Oh man, I'm going to pronounce it differently every single time. How you actually become that and like the steps involved. And I thought that was super fascinating. So those, I feel like they're just adding little tiny bits to the world, little bits of flavor, and they're not actually impacting that narrative that you like so much, which is why I'm fine with them. The American setting, no, I'll come back to that. Let me talk about Cursed Child first. Cursed Child, you said it works, but you haven't actually read it, right?
I haven't read it. I know a bit about it. I don't have the spoilers part of it, but from what I do know about it, it sounds as though that's the way it's going to be for me. I can't speak, that's what it is.
Okay, so I have read Cursed Child, and I don't like it as a story. I don't think it's a good fit for the Harry Potter story. I don't think it needed an 8th story that brought in a new generation and then revisited thoughts that were really wrapped up well by the end of book 7. And this feels like, and I talked about this when I read it in one of our weekly geekeries, it feels like fan fiction. It feels like really highly polished, well-produced fan fiction, but it feels like fan fiction. It doesn't feel like it fits into the world. And when I read it, right, when I went through it, it was fine and I enjoyed my time with it, and it was like a fun roller coaster ride, right? And then as soon as I stopped reading it, when I finished that book or play, it's a play script, but it's out there in book form, as soon as I finished it and I started thinking about it, it just started falling apart. Like everything about it that was holding the narrative together doesn't actually work, because there are so many, like, I'm trying to say this without spoiling it for you because you haven't read it yet, but I know you can nitpick a lot of parts of Harry Potter. This is like all of the worst things together. It was like, why don't we bring in as many things as possible to this 8th story? Like, hey, you remember Harry Potter? Hey, remember this thing from Harry Potter? Hey, remember that other thing?
I've heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah, whereas in the books, there's usually like one new main magical something that ties into the story. This is like, let's take 5 or 6 of them and bring them all back. Hey, do you remember this thing? Hey, let's prey on your nostalgia some more. And it's just frustrating that it falls apart after you actually stop and think about it. So I don't like the story of Cursed Child. I bet it would be fantastic to go watch it as a play.
Oh, and I'm sure.
That's the way it's written, right? It's written as a play, but it was put out there as a book so they can make more money off of it. And I think
there's also,
like, I think that's a misstep.
Oh, I think part of it is also, it's only in London right now. So for Harry Potter to be so big, they would have to publish the script to be able to get it out there, to let people at least experience that story. That if it had just been a play in London, that there would have been a massive outcry of people and fans who wanted to at least know what was going on. And there would have been so many bootlegs at that point that it was a way of protecting themselves more than anything else.
Yeah, it's just, there's a magic to theater, the actual production that transforms it from a script into a play. And without having that in front of you, it just does not hold up. With that said, if the Cursed Child ever comes to a city near me, I am going to go watch it, because I bet it would be amazing as a play. Like, I don't have any doubt that if that is done the right way with production, which of course it's going to be because it's Harry Potter and it has a ton of money behind it, it would just be a fantastic experience.
And from everything I've read, that the technology that they came up with to do a lot of the just spectacle of the play they've advanced theater technology to be able to show this stuff on stage without special effects. That these special effects for theater have been advanced technologically for it. And for me, I really, this is the English teacher talking. This is the English teacher and theater guy talking about this, is whenever I'm teaching or whenever I was teaching drama, I would tell people not to read the play. I would tell people, if it is at all possible, go on the internet, find a YouTube video, find a production of this and watch it. That it's not going to be exactly like it is in your anthology, but you're going to get 10 times out of it what you would if you sat and read it. Because if you're not trained to read scripts, if you haven't spent years and years and years of reading dramatic scripts, then you're not going to be able to fully realize and fully appreciate what's on the page. Because like you said, it's written for the stage, not for reading. That unless you have that kind of ability, you're going to miss a lot of the nuance. So I would always tell my students to go find a production online and watch something. That's something that happens very, very often, is that people look at scripts as being books, and if you're reading it from that perspective, you have to be disappointed. I know you're not, and I know you understand this, but a lot of people who I've heard complain about this, like, oh, it's a script, not a book. Why would they do this to us? And I'm like, that's what it is. That's what it was written for. If you watch this, it's a completely different experience. So you can't judge it wholly on the script. You can judge the script, but don't judge the project on just that script.
Right, because the production and the performance is always transformative. And I know that because I worked in video professionally for a long time. Like, it's the same thing. You write scripts, right? You edit scripts, but then when you actually go to do it, it's a completely different thing. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even if any of you have like watched Shakespeare versus read Shakespeare, I hate reading Shakespeare. It is so boring to me. But if a Shakespeare play ever comes to town and it's put on with a good production and like a good cast, it can't be a bad it can't even be a mediocre cast for Shakespeare.
No, it has to be a good cast.
It has to be a good cast. When Shakespeare comes to town and it's good, I love going and seeing it because it's really good, but the performance is what does it. It's not the words on the page, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Shakespeare wrote it to be performed. He never expected any of this stuff to be collected and put down. So everything that you read, whether it's a quarto version, whether it's a folio version, anything that's been collected and archived, they were put together. A lot of these versions were put together from the scripts that he gave his players. So you're getting so many different versions because you have so many different versions of the script out there that were being performed. Yeah. So he didn't care about it being written down because who read scripts in the early 1600s? Who did that? Nobody. You went to watch these plays, so they would be on garbage paper. They would be these ripped up, crinkled up, basically, just taking written on napkins, essentially, for the most part. I mean, they're put together in very cheap forms because that was what you had to work with. And of course they're not written to be read at that point. So if you can see Shakespeare performed, it is transformative. It is brilliant, and it's some of the best playing that you can watch. But if you read it, I can't read Hamlet. I've been an English teacher for the last decade and been in school for the last 15 years for English. I can't sit and read a Shakespeare play. I just want to start breaking my own arms and bashing my head against the wall because it's terrible. But if I watch something, I watch Macbeth, I watch The Merchant of Venice, I am all in. I'm right there.
Yeah, one of the worst plays my wife and I ever went and saw was a cast performing Romeo and Juliet really, really badly. And then one of like my favorite play that I've ever seen was a really good cast with a really good production putting on Two Gentlemen of Verona. And it's because if you guys don't know, you can take Shakespeare and you can put it into any time period and it just works. Yep. You just have to adapt it slightly. You don't have to change the words. You just change the set dressing and the way the actors like sell it, and it just works. And it's kind of amazing like that. So there was a Two Gentlemen of Verona, and it took place right around the time that like television cameras became a thing.
Oh,
So they actually had
awesome.
cameras from like I want to say like the 50s ish, and they were like recording the people on the stage and then projecting it up onto a projector with these like ye olde cameras that actually were working cameras.
That's awesome.
It was amazing. It was the best play I've ever seen, and I can't do it justice with words, but it was fantastic. But yeah, so performance is transformative. We kind of went on a Shakespeare tangent, which was very unexpected. I did want to get back to something about Harry Potter, though.
But that's the exact same thing of looking at the cursed child, is that you read this stuff and you can think about how it should be performed. Like, I know there's one point where there's a bookcase that eats someone. Like, that's all I know about that scene. And you can see it from the perspective when you're reading the script of what it would look like in a movie, because that's what we have the visual basis for, or what it would be in our mind of looking like this. I see things in cartoons a lot whenever I'm reading, and I see these kinds of just situations. But when you see it on stage done, it is so completely different than what you could have imagined. That, like those cameras in The Two Gentlemen of Verona, it's so different than anything that you've seen, that that the medium is perfect for it. And so I have to hold judgment on even when I read Cursed Child until I can see it on stage. And that's the same thing with Hamilton. When we did it, like, I might have procured a copy of it and still intend to give them all my money for that, just to see what the staging was like. And seeing the clips and videos of it from like the PBS documentary changes how you interpret those songs.
For sure. I did want to get back to another thing that I completely disagree with you about, if that's okay.
Of course.
So it sounds like you've rejected the American Harry Potter setting out of hand. And I think you're doing a disservice there, because
maybe
I agree with, like, I see what you're saying when you're talking about these things that add on to the existing narrative we know. And the existing narrative we know is in England and Scotland, for wherever Hogwarts actually technically is. And it's around Hogwarts and it's around Harry Potter. And Harry Potter is kind of only an interesting character because we are seeing everything from his point of view. If you look at him from the outside, if you look at him from the outside, he's not actually that interesting of a person. He just happens to be linked to the main story in a critical way.
I've wanted Harry Potter to die since the second book, and I got so mad in book 7 when she brought him back to life. I was so happy when he died. When he came back to life, I closed my book and went down and made a sandwich because I was so angry.
Okay, so that's the Harry Potter narrative. But the thing is, in creating the Harry Potter narrative, J.K. Rowling made an interesting world, right? And what she's done with a couple stories on Pottermore is taken the interesting parts of the world, transplanted them to America, so they don't have to be connected to Harry Potter at all in any way whatsoever, and then twisted them to make it their own setting. And so she has this setting in America, which is the school in America. I think it's called Ilvermorny or something like that. I have to look it up again.
The word.
And the school setup there is like a twisted version of Hogwarts in a very interesting way. She's established enough of it that there's this like fertile setting to tell stories in that doesn't have to intersect with the narrative we already know. So I know with Fantastic Beasts, which we'll start getting into here in a second, we're going back to pre-Harry Potter America, right? We're going back to, it looks like the 20s, basically. I would love to see like an American narrative in modern day in the American school. So, because then you don't have to worry about the fallout from Harry Potter, because all that's happening over in England, right? Like if you
that was happening in 90s in England in the 90s.
If you try to set anything in England or even Europe, you have to have it acknowledge Harry Potter in some way, because there would be intricately linked, because not enough time has passed. If you go and you take what she's established in America instead and you build a new narrative over there, you can kind of do whatever you want with it. And I bet there are ways to do this in other parts of the world too. You just have to get away from Europe, because so much of that Harry Potter narrative is so intricately linked with different parts of Europe that there's no way around it, which is why I'm sure you feel like you do, but you haven't actually read the stuff about America, right?
Right. No, I haven't. I've seen synopses and things like that. And I guess part of it for me is that I don't care about it in America, that there's not been anything to make me care about the American side, and that the world itself has never felt real to me. I guess the way that she had presented all of this secret magical world never felt fully fleshed out to me. That, I don't know, I love the stories, and I love the stories because of the characters, not because of the world, which is the opposite of what it is for Star Wars with me, that I love that world and pretty much anything that they're going to do with it, and I haven't cared about the Harry Potter world, like, ever.
Okay. No, that's totally a valid point of view. We should probably tie that into, like, what are we kind of expecting from Fantastic Beasts? Because for me, I hope it's fun, but I don't have a whole lot of expectations because the existing Harry Potter movies haven't been fantastic. I mean, they're good to see everything that we love come to life, but on their own as movies, like we already talked about, they're not fantastic, right?
Yeah.
The thing I'm hopeful for with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which is out very soon, if not out by the time, I actually don't know when it releases. It might be out before this podcast comes out.
I think it's this weekend as we're recording it, actually.
Okay, it's very, very soon. It's the first Harry Potter like universe movie that's actually written for the screen first. So it should make a better movie than any of the movies we have so far. If it doesn't, that's a horrible sign. But it should, because it's written for the screen before it's written for anything else.
And that's one of the biggest pushes for me to give it a real chance, because I'm not excited about this one. I'm going to go see it this weekend. I have a friend who's really super mega excited, like Harry Potter is his Star Wars, like it is for me. And I'm excited to see him so excited about it. And I'm 100% on board with you on that, because it was written specifically for the screen, that it's written as a screenplay first. That will make a huge difference in how the characters are presented, how the narrative is presented, that if they can do something with these people that are as engaging as the book characters were for Harry Potter.
Yeah, and I hope so. But the thing that does worry me is that I thought this was standalone, and then I found out it was going to be a trilogy. And then just like a month or two ago, they came out and said, actually, this is going to be a 5-part movie series.
5.
We haven't even had the first one yet. Why would you tell us that? Like, why would you tell us that if you watch this one, you're only getting 1/5 of the story? Like, don't do that. Let people get invested first, and then tell them, hey, there's going to be all of these other things that you can be interested in. And I think they announced it because they also told people that it's going to start including some of the stuff with Grindelwald and Dumbledore from earlier in their life, because obviously this is way before Harry Potter by like 60 years, something like that.
70, I think, is what I heard.
Oh, yeah, if Harry Potter is early 90s, then yeah, like 70 years. And because of that, they needed to extend it out from the trilogy that they had at that point to now 5 movies. So I think if anything, this first one is going to stand on its own the most, because at some point it was supposed to be its own movie without others attached. But now I'm worried. I'm worried that they're getting too grandiose too early, right? Like DC, kind of like the MC. Like, okay, to tangent here for a second. The MCU kind of evolved organically from Iron Man, right? And then they started tying in all of these other movie properties. And now it's very overseen and produced and things, but it didn't start out that way. It just kind of started out and grew from what it grew from. DC saw the success that they had, and they said, we need one of those universes too. Let's just start from scratch and try to produce and overproduce and overanalyze and mess with this universe as we create it. And it has not worked out well for them. And
it has not.
I'm afraid that's what's going to happen with these.
That's a big fear of mine too, that they have overextended themselves before seeing what works and what doesn't. That they did that with The Hobbit as well, and we see what happened. They did it with The Hunger Games and extended Mockingjay into 2 parts. And I don't know about a lot of other people, but I feel as though I know that the people around me just lost interest after the first Mockingjay. That I still haven't even seen the second half of it, and I know a few people who are around me, my Hunger Games friends, they didn't watch it either. That this is the same thing, and even DC has pulled back. That Justice League is no longer going to be a 2-parter like they announced. That it was supposed to go toe to toe with the Avengers: Infinity War. Now it's only 1 movie. So because what was it? Because Batman because Batman versus Superman did so poorly. I do 100% agree with you about young Dumbledore and Grindelwald, that I'm super excited to see them, because Dumbledore and Grindelwald as young men could be a unifying force to make this feel, I don't even know how to say it. They could be this just unifying force for the universe, I suppose, to make it feel like Harry Potter in a completely different setting, to make people like me buy in.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and kind of see what happens. The other thing I'm excited to see, the Grindelwald that they announced is Johnny Depp, which could be very good.
Oh, God, no!
Do you not like Johnny Depp? I feel like he's really good in some roles, and other roles it's like, oh, yep, it's Johnny Depp again.
I like Johnny Depp when he is playing Johnny Depp. That when he's doing a normal, just everyday kind of character like he does in Donnie Brasco. Have you ever seen Donnie Brasco?
I have not.
It's brilliant. Like, Johnny Depp is at his best when he's doing roles like that. But when he's doing these, like, really weird, Jack Sparrow, Mad Hatter, like Tim Burton roles, I hate him. He is hard for me to watch because it is so acting, that it is so put on, that I'm really hoping that he is just a dude. He is just this wizard, going about his day, being this kind of, being Grindelwald, not being Johnny Depp being Grindelwald.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing we can do except wait and see at this point.
But wait and see on it.
So, okay, well, it's interesting. We kind of have the same view of the Harry Potter, like, books, and that we like them, and the movies are a mixed bag, but then after that, you and I have very different views on the rest of the universe, so this ended up being more in-depth than I thought, which is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
It's probably time for Geeky Offer of the Week. You have something, right?
Yeah, the Geeky Offer of the Week this week is going to be Gamefly, because we have it. If you guys, I'm going to be doing this really soon, and I know Void has been doing this for a long time. You've heard us talk about this. Gamefly is a rental service that you can do through subscriptions online, where you get sent video games and you can try out and you can buy if you really, really like them. So I'm going to be doing this for some 3DS games over Christmas, I believe, to be able to play Zelda Link Between Worlds and Kirby Planet Robobot, I think is the name of it, and maybe one of the Yoshi games. I can't remember the name of it on the 3DS, but I'm super excited to try this service because I keep hearing so many wonderful things about Void, and we would like you guys to be able to help support the podcast and get a free month of Gamefly to try out some free video games. Who doesn't love free video games? So if you would take your handy dandy web browser over to gameflyoffer.com/geek and get yourself a Gamefly subscription for free, and you would be helping us out a bunch, and we'd really appreciate it.
That actually ties into my Weekly Geekery. If you don't know Weekly Geekery, it's what we share, what we've been geeking out about this week. I am almost done with my Gamefly subscription. So I kind of told you guys this
done for a while.
Yeah. So when I started, I said that there were all of these like not quite AAA games, or some of them are AAA that I just wasn't as interested in, but a lot of them are almost like B tier games in my mind. And they had just built up over the last like 3 or 4 years. I don't know. I wouldn't pick up games I wasn't super excited for ever since having my kids, because time is at a premium when you're a parent. And basically I wanted to just power through all of these games from the last like 3 or 4 years that I never wanted to buy. And so I got Gamefly, and I've been just flying through them, right? They come to me, I play them for a day or two, and then I send them all back. And it's worked out really well. So I had the last one that was coming out for fall releases, came to me over this weekend. I played it, I sent it back. So I'm about ready to cancel my Gamefly subscription and then let it build up for another like 6 months or a year, and then get it for a few months again and binge. So I played Dishonored 2, which is fine. It's kind of a cool stealth first-person game. It's not that different from the first game. Like, I liked Dishonored, and I was hoping that I don't know what I was hoping. I thought this one might be more or different enough to really grab me, and it didn't.
Yeah.
Part of it is also just the setting was very like grim and gritty, and I didn't want to spend a ton of time in that world right now at this moment. right before, like,
I wonder why.
Yeah, but I mean, also just like the winter's coming, like the sun is going down a lot earlier. It's like all the seasonal stuff. I just don't want to be in a grim, gritty, dark world right now. So I kind of made a mental note for Dishonored 2 that when I am in the mood for a first-person stealth game, it's going to be a really good one to come back to, but I'm just not in the mood for it right now. So I sent that back to GameFly, and I'm going to wrap up my subscription, and then, like Marvel Unlimited, I'm just going to kind of like let the backlog build up until it gets to a point where it feels like, okay, it's time to jump back in for a month or two. And I think that's the way I'm going to use GameFly from now on. Just grab it for a couple months, cancel it, wait a while, grab it for a couple months. So we'll see how that ends up working out in the end.
And, you speaking of Marvel Unlimited, I saw it this week and wanted to tell everybody about it, that for right now, that this is the middle of November in 2016. So if you're listening to this as it comes out, you can actually get half off on Marvel Unlimited. And this isn't, anything for us. I just wanted to let you guys know about it because we do subscribe every so often on Marvel Unlimited, both Void and me, that you can get it for $60 a year, which is $5 a month if you can do math, but that's half the normal price. So if you're the kind of person who wants this kind of thing to catch up on back issues of Marvel Comics, right now is the best time. I'm thinking it may end at some point within the next couple of weeks before the end of November, so you should definitely check that out and see I'll post the promo code in the show notes, but you guys should definitely check out Marvel Unlimited if you haven't done that yet. So that's a really cool geeky thing that y'all should get in on.
Yeah, every couple months they do some kind of really good promotion. So usually I wait till my backlog is built up, and then I wait until they do their next promo, and then I'll pick it up for a month or whatever their discount is for.
And I usually do it for when they have free months around their new. They're this time it's a Doctor Strange promo where they're doing it for half off for a year, but there's usually a free month that you can get every so often, and I'll do that and catch up on my backlog. And I expect there to be one in December probably, or maybe at the end of December for a new year kind of thing. Get a free month for the new year and then stay with us because we want your money.
Yeah, it's good to keep your eye on that if you like comics at all. Speaking of comics though, didn't you watch Supergirl this week?
I did, and I did not expect to like it as much as I did. Have you seen any of it?
I tried to watch the first season. I think I watched about 3 episodes and I couldn't. It wasn't a show that clicked with me at all.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you why. Because I watched the pilot when they actually leaked it online. I downloaded it whenever it leaked, and we watched it, and I liked it well enough. It was pretty good. But I didn't care a lot when it came on TV, when it was airing. I was just like, whatever. Jennifer was like, I want to watch it, but, we'll watch it when it gets on Netflix. And so she started watching it recently, and I did the same thing as you. I watched bits and pieces of it with her, and it just wasn't something I cared about at all. And I want to know why you didn't, so that I can tell you why I didn't.
I don't remember. I just got bored. Like something about it just didn't work for me. It's been too long. I can't put my finger on it. I want to say it was something with like her power set. I felt like she should have been better at solving problems. There's something with that Superman power set, like you can do anything, and every week it seems like your powers scale exactly to what your enemy's power level is. And that really bugs me because it doesn't make any sense. Even though I can suspend disbelief for a lot of superheroes, just Superman and by extension, Supergirl in particular, that bugs me about it. The other thing was the characters. I just didn't like them all that much. And that was probably the biggest part of it. I didn't care about the characters. It felt a little bit too...
comic booky,
CWE,
yeah.
Does that make sense?
And I totally get it, because that was what put me off of the first of the season too. I came in later though, while Jennifer was watching an episode, and it was probably around episode 8 or so, maybe episode 9-ish, that I came in and just sat down on the couch, started messing around on my phone while it was going on, and I realized that the characters that I thought were kind of bland and like I don't remember any of these people's names, that I started recognizing that they had relationships and that they had already grown and changed by being around. And that the whole thing with Kara, Supergirl, was that the power set that she was getting wasn't always what was needed to save the day. That she would get like she would get attacked and she wouldn't be able to handle it, and so her friends were brought in. And there have been some really poignant moments during this that it never stopped feeling CW-y. I mean, that's why the CW picked it up for season 2, but it got really good. Like, I started really caring about these people and their relationships, that it never lost that kind of fun lightheartedness that it started out with, but it found its footing way more in terms of the personal relationships, and that's what pushed me through, especially when they introduced Martian Manhunter, and did it pretty well. And season 2 is actually handling a few issues really, really well that I've seen them handling, like sexual coming out, like characters dealing with their sexuality in other shows, 100 times worse than they're handling something on this one. So I think that if you want to, give it a shot. If not, I completely understand, because I wasn't going to until she started it, but I have really enjoyed Supergirl, and honestly, it put me back in a comic book mood where I started continuing on with Daredevil because of it.
You didn't tell me about this. I'm more interested in hearing about that, because I don't think I'm going to go back to Supergirl. CW shows don't really work for me. I was really surprised The Flash season 1 resonated with me, and I love that season. And then everything after season 1 has felt more and more and more CW-ish. And I just don't like that style of show at all.
Okay, then go and watch one episode of Supergirl. There is a Flash crossover in season 1.
I watched that one. I saw that one.
Did you?
Yeah,
Did you like it?
I liked the Flash part of it.
Okay, if you didn't like the Supergirl part, then you won't like the rest of it. But that was probably my favorite episode of the season. So if you liked it, yeah, you'd probably like the rest of the show. If you didn't like the Supergirl part, yeah, not for you.
No, okay, that's good. That's what I needed. Now I know it's not for me. But yeah, tell me, you got back to Daredevil. You're in season 1, right?
I'm still on season 1. I'm on episode 9 now, I believe, and I'm invested. A couple of things happened at this point to make me really care about the world, and I hate that it took this long to make me want to watch more.
Yes.
That I think that it had too much of a slow start setting everything up, that it was repeating too much going in.
Yes. No, it's just nobody ever says this, and I completely agree with you. Yes.
And I stopped watching it, like, what is it now, 4 times I've stopped watching this, and I picked it up because I watched Supergirl. Jennifer and I finished Supergirl, and I'm like, I want to watch more, but we'll probably watch The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Arrow again together because of how much we both really like Supergirl. So Daredevil's the only one that I could really binge on my own. And whenever Stick was introduced, and the end of, I want to say it was episode 7, maybe? I think it was episode 7, when Stick and they were talking, Black Sky was introduced, and Stick got, like, there was some guy on a mat with scars all over his back. I want to know more. And this is the first time where they start bringing in more than just the organized crime, when they start bringing in different parts of Daredevil, when they brought in Stick and they did all of this, that I'm really legitimately curious on where they're going with the season for the first time. And the stuff that happened at the end of episode 8, I don't know what they're going to be doing with it. They've surprised me. They did flashbacks for Wilson. They had him as a kid and showing what made him what he is today, that I'm really curious on, because I love how they do it. And I've heard that it's a more of an origin story for the Kingpin than it is for Daredevil himself, that it's really telling his story over Matt's. And I can totally see that with the flashback that they started halfway through. And I really wish they had had a 10-episode season where they would have just skipped like the first 3 episodes outside of a few scenes for Daredevil.
Yep, I feel the same way. I think I told you when I finished it that Daredevil season 1, I was glad I had watched it, but I don't think I would ever rewatch it. And I have trouble recommending it to people because it feels like super long drawn out origin stories, which I don't like all that much to begin with. And then it's not just Daredevil's origin, it's also Kingpin's origin. And there are so many flashbacks in that season. Like, it feels like half the season is done in flashbacks, which I hate that.
And it's not done in flashbacks like it is on Arrow, where it's part of the structure of the show to have these parallel narratives. That is how they've made that show, so it's easy to reconcile. That's how you're watching it. With this one, sometimes it takes you completely out of what's going on, and the only ones I've really truly enjoyed have been the Kingpins.
Yeah.
And that was in episode 8.
Yeah, his are more interesting than Matt's are. But by the time you get to the end of the season, it feels like, oh, okay, we've established a lot, and now season 2 can be really good. And I liked season 2 so much more than season 1.
I look really forward to seeing it based on how well they've done midway through season 1.
Cool. Okay, so for me, the other thing I wanted to talk about was I tried to get an NES Classic, and I told Beej about all the places I checked and how hard I tried. Nintendo totally messed this up. They so underestimated demand for the NES Classic systems that it sold out everywhere instantly. Like, if you weren't in line hours before physical retail stores opened up, there was no way to get this. And they didn't do pre-orders anywhere. Like, Nintendo wouldn't let companies pre-order this. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I would have, because, okay, I find it just dumb that you can pre-order every game that has no supply issue, right? Like, you can pre-order everything now. All of these games where you're never going to have trouble finding them on day one, or you can download them digitally, or like you can walk into any retail store on day one of a game launching and just pick it up. So there's no reason to pre-order unless there's really some pre-order bonus that you absolutely have to have. And that's almost never the case. It's usually more of a, yeah, okay, that's a nice to have, right?
Yeah, that's cool. I'll get that.
But hardware is where pre-orders make sense, because hardware, you can't just download it, right? And there's actual scarcity when it comes out. And Nintendo announced this in July. They should have let all of the retailers open up pre-orders on that day, because they told exactly what it was, exactly what was included, and exactly what the price was. Like, there were no mysteries there to stop retailers from taking pre-orders. You could have let retailers take pre-orders and then have 4 months to ramp up supply to meet the demand for all of those. And they didn't. And now all of these people out there like me can't get one. And
you could pay $1,000 on eBay.
You can. Most of the ones on eBay are going for like $200 to $300, which is already way too much money. But some people have them listed.
Too much.
Yeah, some people have them listed for like $900 or $1,000. And I mean, I know that eventually supply will catch up, but that doesn't mean that it sucked any less when I went to get one and I couldn't, you know? And it's just sad. Like, it's such a cute little perfect 30 game console, and it has nostalgia. I mean, it's a nostalgia box, right? And I don't know how they could have underestimated demand so badly. So the thing is, they're either, I mean, I saw an article about it that I mostly agreed with. There are parts that I don't, but it seems like they're either incompetent with their supply and demand, or they are using this as a marketing ploy and putting out so few consoles that they're going to drum up a bunch of people like me who are complaining about it, and I can't get them because they're such a hot property, and they're going to get more free publicity for it, which either way, that sucks as someone who really likes Nintendo stuff. And I just want to be able to play it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I sent you a text message about this when you said you couldn't get it when we were talking about it, where it feels like after the Switch was received so poorly among most people, among a lot of people, and their stock dropped, which is still ridiculous to me, but that this is the kind of thing where, to me, it feels like, oh, look, people actually do want our stuff. See, guys, we sold out, that the Switch is going to be great. Just you wait. And it just feels petty almost, because they knew people wanted this. There was so much hype
but what
beforehand.
If they didn't? What if they didn't know? What if they are really that incompetent when it comes to the demand for their products? That worries me just as much as this being a marketing ploy, because it's very possible that Nintendo doesn't understand the power of their own nostalgia, because they've never actually used it effectively. Like,
that's true.
They've never done Virtual Console in ways that they could have that would have made it a gigantic success. And
yeah, that's very true.
This is the first direct appeal to nostalgia in actual video game form, and not some other like tangential property that they've ever done. Okay. And I know they've done other ones like Virtual Console, but they don't promote them. And it's not something that you can go and just pick up at the store and have nostalgia in your hand. This is the first time they've done that. And if they really don't understand the power of the nostalgia for Nintendo, that's worrying, because they could capitalize on this, and it could be not only a huge retail success for them, it could be fantastic for people like you and me who want to recapture parts of our childhood. Like, I really want a mini Super Nintendo. Like, if
absolutely. That's the one I want more than anything.
They need to take this idea and then apply it to the next generation up, and they will kill it at retail. Like, it'll be so much more than they're going to get with this one, which is already looking like a hot property. And it worries me for the Switch too. Like, if they misjudge demand for their product this much, what if the Nintendo Switch comes out and there's just not enough of them out there? Because they're gun shy now after the Wii and the Wii U, because both of those they didn't estimate correctly, right? The Wii, they didn't know that it was going to be this gigantic success, and they had supply issues for like 2 years after that console came out. They could not keep it in stores. And then the Wii U, they couldn't get rid of them. Like, they couldn't sell those. They still can't sell those things. And I just don't know what Nintendo's doing. But I love Nintendo games, and I want to play them. So whenever I can get my hands on the NES Classic, I'm going to. And I'm still super excited for the Switch. But it was this little, it was most of my morning on Friday that I spent with this. And so I was just kind of standing in lines trying to get it while thinking about it and talking to other people around me and connecting, which was really cool. But it just made me start thinking about, what is Nintendo doing? Like, do they really not know? And I think that's an interesting thought.
That is, you're right, given how everything has been going lately. And I never thought about the Virtual Console that way, but you're absolutely right. It's always felt as though it's an afterthought that they just do this stuff, because it's just, there's no rhyme or reason to what they release and how they release it.
Yeah, it's tacked on, and it's cool, and I like the Virtual Console, but it's never been a focus. They could have taken Virtual Console and like ported it to all of the systems and made it a subscription service. Do you know how many people would pay for that? If you could play Virtual Console Nintendo games, which would include like their whole backlog that's not current gen. If you could play all those games on PlayStation and Xbox and PC, like, and just they'd charge people like $10 a month.
So much.
They would make so much money. Like, it would be a subscription. Like, you wouldn't even have to own it. People would pay for that. No question.
They would make hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh yeah. Yeah, easily. So those are my Nintendo thoughts for the week. I will tell you guys whenever I do get one, because I'm going to keep watching, and I will get one eventually. I guarantee it. The other thing I tried this week was Skyrim Special Edition, which I got for free, because if you own it on Steam, the original one, you got the Special Edition for free, which was pretty cool.
And I just haven't installed it yet.
Yeah, so I went back, and the first night back to it, I was like, oh yeah, this game's awesome. I forgot how many things there are and how cool it is and how nice it is to have this like fleshed out open world. And I played for, I don't know, 5 hours maybe that night. And then I came back to it the second day, and it hit me that this is just Skyrim still. And I've already put hundreds of hours into this game, and I probably don't need to put any more time into it. So after 2 nights, I was done with it.
Which is fine, because you've already got your time with it. That the special edition is for people who either are still playing Skyrim or they haven't experienced it at all, and this is a supposedly much better edition of it to introduce themselves to.
Right. And that's the thing, is like, I didn't pay for this one. I got it for free, and I already got my money's worth when I played through Skyrim the first time whenever it came out, like 2010 or something. I don't remember when it came out. It's been a while.
2011 maybe,
I don't know.
I don't remember.
Something like that. So yeah, Skyrim Special Edition is more Skyrim, and you will know if that appeals to you or not.
This is true. And there's not any extras with it, that if there had been a separate DLC, then, I mean, I haven't played through any of the DLC that I've thought about going back and doing this for like Dawn Guard and stuff like that I haven't done.
Yep. Okay, well, I think that will do it for this week, and we're actually recording next week's episode right now, right after we wrap this up, because you guys sent us a bunch of questions. We're going to answer them and then schedule it out ahead of time with the magic of scheduling so that we have Thanksgiving week off.
The internets.
Ooh. But as always, you can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussion threads on the subreddit, or feel free to jump in there and create your own discussion thread. We love jumping in and talking to you guys. It's reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And if you want to get email updates about whenever any of our network's podcasts go live, you can sign up at geek2geekcast.net and just tell us which shows you want updates about. And you'll get the show notes and download links directly in your inbox.
I blog almost daily at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @ProfessorBeej. That's Beej with 2 E's. And I host the Geek Fitness Health Hacks podcast and blog at geekfitness.net.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Goodbye, geeks.